we're going to look at an example of computing the mean for a probability distribution. So this probability distribution represents the number of DVDs a person rents from a video store during a single visit. So we have our probability distribution with the values of X in this column and the probabilities of X in the second column. Now we could look at the probability histogram to try and estimate the value of the mean. But what we want to do here is actually figure out how to calculate it. So if we're going to calculate it by hand, what we do is add a column to the table, and that column is going to be X times P of X. In other words, for each row in this table, we're going to take the X times the P of X, and we're going to calculate those in our added column. So over here I already have 0 times 0.06 and 1 times 0.0 and 1 times 0.58. We would calculate the rest of those values and then add up the results, and that would give us our mean. So again, to do this by hand, you just multiply each X value by its probability and then add up the results. Now we also want to look at how to do this with your graphing calculator. So I put a little bit into this slide to get you started on how to do this, but this isn't the easiest thing in the world to do on your calculator. So I actually want to show you how to go through all of this. So what we're going to do on the calculator is go to our lists, and that we get to by pushing the Stat button. It'll come up here and say Edit. That's what we want, so we push Enter. And now we have our list. It says L1, L2. And if you've used this previously, you might have some numbers in these lists. If that's the case, you should go through and delete them. So to delete them, just use your up arrow so that the name of the list is highlighted, and then push Clear, and then push Enter. That will delete anything that was already in the list. You can do the same thing for L2 if you have any numbers there. So again, just arrow up so the name of the list is highlighted, then push Clear, and then push Enter. Now we want to go back and enter the X's and the probabilities into the two lists. We're going to put the X's into list 1 and the probabilities into list 2. So I'm already here in list 1, so I'm just going to start entering my numbers. So we're going all the way from 0 up to 5 for the X's, and then I'm going to arrow over to my list 2, and now I'm going to put in all the probabilities. Now when I have all those in there, what I want to do to find the mean and even the standard deviation for this probability distribution is I want to go back to my stat. I'm going to use the 1-bar stats, so I want to go over to Calc. I'm going to select the 1-bar stats. Now here's where it's a little bit different than the way we used this before. So since I actually have two lists that I want my calculator to look at, here where it says L1, I can leave that the way it is. That's where my X value should be. Where it says frequency list, there I want to tell it L2. So to get L2, I'm going to use second and the 2 button. So that says L2. Then I'm going to enter and enter again. And this is giving me my mean for my probability distribution. Remember, X bar is the symbol for the sample mean. So here we've got the mean for our probability distribution is 1.49. Now if we wanted the standard deviation, what we did before with 1-bar stats, the SX was the standard deviation we used. But in this one, if you've put in your probabilities correctly so that they add up to 1, then this SX should come out blank. So what we have to use for this, for the standard deviation, is the sigma x. So our standard deviation would be 0.93. Our mean for the probability distribution would be 1.49. One more thing I want to show you, that is if you have a little bit older calculator, when you go to the Calc menu and select your 1-var stats, it will just come up on the screen and say 1-var stats like this. Now for this one, you have to tell it that you want it to use both L1 and L2. So to get L1, you do second and the 1 button. Then you need to do a comma and tell it L2 by doing second and the L2 button. If you put both of those in there, then it will calculate again your mean and your standard deviation for your probability distribution. Okay, so we found that the mean is 1.49. Now let's look at another example, and this one has to do with expected value. So this is an expected value for a game. In this game, we're drawing just one card from a regular deck. If it's a heart or a diamond, we win $2. If it's a club, we win $3. If it's a spade, we lose $8. We want to find the expected value. Expected value is the same as the mean. So first we're going to do this by hand. What this means is that we need to set up our probability distribution table first. And then we're going to add a column to it and do the x times p of x like we talked about before. So here would be our complete table for our probability distribution. Notice in the x column, we have the amounts of money that you win or lose depending on what type of card you get. So if it's a heart or a diamond, you win $2. And we're doing this from the point of view of the player. So winning $2 means that we have a positive 2. If you draw a club, you win $3, so we have a positive 3. If you draw a spade, you lose $8, and we're signifying that losing of $8 by making that a negative 8. For the probabilities, since there are an equal amount of hearts, diamonds, clubs, and spades in a deck, each of those probabilities is just equal to 1/4, because each of those is 1/4 of the deck. Okay, so here where we're doing it by hand, we have each one of these x's times its probability. So we're going to multiply all those together and then add those results up to get our final answer. Now, if we wanted to do it with the calculator, we would go back to our stat button and hit enter so that we can edit our lists. And I'm going to go up and clear these 2 lists out that we already had. So I'm going to enter my x's in L1. And I'm going to enter my probabilities in L2. And I can actually go ahead and put this in here as 1 divided by 4. I don't have to figure out the decimal because the calculator will do it for me. So just for each of these, I'm going to put in 1 divided by 4. And then I'm going to use the 1-var stats. So I'm going to push stat and then arrow over to calc, select the 1-var stats. And I still have this where this comes up on the screen, so I need to tell it L1, comma, L2. Even if you get the other type of screen, you can put the L1 and the L2 in there. And here's what we get for our mean. So our sample mean for this is negative 0.25. That is the same as our expected value. So if we had done it by hand and added those results together, we would have gotten negative 0.25. That's the same thing that we're getting it by doing it this way with the calculator. What this means for expected value is that if you play the game a whole bunch of times in a row, you're going to lose an average of 25 cents per play. That doesn't mean that you're losing 25 cents on any one play, but if you play it a bunch of times in a row, that's the average amount of money that you use per play.